Hi everybody, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, and I would like to introduce to you Marcus Vaughn, speaking on JWs deliberately lie when they say Bethel is volunteer work. Enjoy.
Hello everyone, Marcus here, and I spoke to some witnesses. They were by a cart, and we talked a little bit about Bethel. I brought up, where do these materials come from, the literature and things of that sort, and they brought up Bethel. So then, of course, I asked a question about the Bethel quote unquote reassignings, and they used the excuse. Jehovah's Witnesses used the excuse, and it's actually an out and out lie, that Bethelites were volunteers, that this was voluntary, and that they were fully aware that their voluntary service would end at an undisclosed time. Now, one thing that we have to make clear is that lying is not Christian. Christians are not to go and lie in order to cover up wrongdoing. If you're a Christian and your organization or you or somebody does something wrong, there is to be a repentant attitude. There is to be a confession. You confess to it. Whatever it is that happened, you confess, you admit that it happened and that it was wrong. Lying in order to make it seem like it wasn't wrong, or lying in order to cover it up, is not Christian. If Jehovah's Witnesses are Christian, they are not permitted to tell a bunch of people that God wants them to serve as Bethelites and become what is called regular full-time special servants at Bethel, and then later change their minds, send a bunch of them home and say, oh, they knew they were volunteering for an undisclosed period of time. That is what we call a lie. And the problem with this is that I'm not sure if the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses has put this in print somewhere and told Jehovah's Witnesses to say this, or if individual Jehovah's Witnesses become embarrassed by it and then just start lying of their own accord. Either way, it's wrong. And if Jehovah's Witnesses are quote unquote so wholesome and quote unquote so Christian, then lying should not immediately come up as a first resort. It shouldn't be so easy for a Christian to lie. And it was very easy for these people at the carts to just say, oh, they knew they were volunteers and that they knew that was going to happen. No, we didn't. Now, volunteering is done freely out of your spare time, what have you, whenever it is that you want to do it, because I have volunteered at the soup kitchens, and I've volunteered at clothing drives. I would go, when I was off work, sign up my name in the book, what time I came in, and I would work. And whenever I wanted to leave, I would then go back to that book, sign my name that I was leaving and the time that I left. That's volunteering. Now, someone explain to me what part of Bethel service was voluntary. Now, we don't think of our jobs as voluntary, even though when you go to work, you're perfectly capable of walking out the door. We don't look at our jobs as voluntary. So just because a Bethelite is capable physically of just walking out of Bethel, that doesn't mean Bethel service is voluntary, right? There were religious directives to serve at Bethel. It was a religious directive that this is something God wanted. Let me make this very clear that there are people at Bethel that didn't enjoy being at Bethel. It was a sacrifice. And they were making this sacrifice for God because they were directed that it was God's will. If they didn't think God cared and it was just voluntary and they didn't like it, they just wouldn't be there. But be assured, Bethel in their efforts, this business, Bethel in their efforts to keep people there, they weren't telling people, oh, this is just a voluntary thing, come and go as you please. That's not what they were telling people. They were telling people to make it a career, that they were working directly for God. They were telling people, as a matter of fact, that what assignment you got at Bethel, Jesus, in guiding and directing matters in the organization, directly gave you that assignment. So it was a religious directive. People were told, God wants you to do this. That's a little bit different from voluntary service, because there's some pushing to go and do things like that. Pioneering, for example. Pioneers are heavily encouraged that's what God wants them to do. Ministerial servant, you're told that's what you're supposed to do. And if you're not getting these assignments or reaching out for them, then something is wrong. The concept that the organization just leaves it up to people, the school, if you're not in the school, you're looked at as something's wrong. Everybody is a part of the school. If you don't go door to door, something's wrong. Everybody goes door to door. These things aren't exactly voluntary. These things are expected. So when the elders start to tell me that they think I should fill out a application to go to Bethel, and I'm getting that same directive from the literature that I'm reading, from some of the theocratic videos, quote unquote theocratic videos that I'm watching. None of this is put to you as something you do if you feel like it. This is something that a lot of people would explain as a calling, something you feel God is urging you to do. And the reason why you feel that way is because religiously you have been directed to feel that way. Let's get into the specifics, because I want to know what part. You guys comment down below what part of Bethel was voluntary. Morning worship, 7 o'clock sharp, in your seat there with the daily text for morning worship. Was this voluntary? If I was tired, I didn't want to get up at 7, I didn't have to necessarily be at my assignment at that time, could I just not attend morning worship? No. You have a table head there that would know if you weren't showing up for morning worship. And morning worship is really the first part of the day at Bethel. So the very first thing you do 7 o'clock in the morning is not voluntary. It's an expectation. Now, one of my first assignments was shipping and receiving in the food warehouse, where we would get trucks, Casa trucks, Pepsi trucks, whatever trucks, coming in, bringing in supplies, and those supplies would be stored until the different kitchens in Brooklyn and Patterson and wherever else needed those supplies to be shipped out. Now, when we would get a truck that it wasn't going to come to the warehouse during normal working hours, you would have to be on call. Meaning whenever the truck got there, you would be notified, whether it be by a beeper, someone calling your room, what have you, and then you would have to then go back to your workplace to offload that truck, regardless of what time it was it got there. That's not voluntary. If a truck came in late or we were behind, and you had a meeting that day, and you needed to be off for your meeting, you would be instructed that Bethel comes before your meetings. It wasn't voluntary. It came before Watchtower. The organization would state, Bethel comes before your meetings. The organization is telling you, Bethel is so important. If it comes down to it, miss your meeting, stay there and work. Doesn't sound voluntary. Doesn't sound, hey, sorry guys, time for me to go. At what point does this become voluntary? So your work schedule was not voluntary. Your job assignment. Some people were given assignments to work in the kitchen or to be waiters. Now, from my understanding, the people that worked in the kitchen would have to be up at extremely early hours because those things had to be prepared before morning worship, which was at 7 a.m. So they had to be at work even earlier, getting all those things prepared. Meals cooked. They didn't say who all wants to be waiters, and then you raise your hand if you wanted to be a waiter, if you raised your hand if you wanted to be a cook. You were told that's what you were going to do. Your assignment isn't even voluntary. Hey, I kind of like working in electric. You know, I've got a background in electric. You're told, no, you're not going to work in electric. You're going to work here. Now, when I go and volunteer to work in, let's say, the food kitchen, they're not telling me, no, you're going to work in a clothing drive. No, if that's where I want to work, then because that's what volunteering is. You know what I mean? I think some Jehovah's Witnesses selectively forget what volunteering is. See? And the problem with the selective forgetfulness is it's really close to, if not flat out, lying. And that is unacceptable. For any organization that calls itself Christian, for its members to just go around doing that. That is unacceptable. Now, your work days. I would work Monday and all the way up into Saturday. I would work a half a day. Now, you know, Saturday you're tired. There might not even be much to do that Saturday. You may literally go in and there isn't much to do that Saturday. You just up and leave. No. You're there for a set time until a set time. It's not an option. It's not a voluntary situation there. You're doing what you're told to do. And that goes clear into the vacations. Now, when I'm volunteering at a clothing drive, food drive, any voluntary thing that I can think of, you know, do I have to put in for vacation? Now, I don't mean just letting people know you're not going to be available for a period of time and informing people. I don't mean informing. I mean request. Can I go visit my family? No. That does not happen. There's no voluntary situation where you have to live on a compound and request whether or not you can leave to go and visit family. That's you're probably not volunteering. And that is the case at Bethel. I remember going out of the country, and one of the problems was vacation time. You know, I want to be out of the country for X amount of time. Bethel is telling me you don't have that much vacation to be out of the country that amount of time. There's nothing voluntary about it. So how then can people who've been taught about Bethel for their entire life, if they've been raised Jehovah's Witness, up and forget that it's not voluntary? Most likely they didn't forget. Most likely they know it's not voluntary. Most likely they just flat out lie. Because being Christian is secondary to obeying Watchtower. Very secondary to obeying Watchtower. And the length of time that you volunteer. I don't know too many people that sell their house and quit their job and don't have money and then go to volunteer. Normally you keep your job, you keep your career, and you volunteer when you have the time to do so. At Bethel, you had people sell their house, not have kids, hold off on marriage. You know, I mean, people who kind of wanted to be married and they're at Bethel and they're holding off on marriage to try to remain there long enough to be able to bring a wife into Bethel. These aren't things that you do if you didn't have to do it. You're not doing those sorts of things if you didn't have to do it. You want a girlfriend, you go get your girlfriend. Y'all want to go get married, you go get married. I mean, and you can't do all that working for free. So that would present a problem that you would not have if that was voluntary, because it would have been looked at as perfectly acceptable that if you want to date, you just leave. It's not viewed that way. You leave Bethel, people expect you to have a very good reason to have left, namely that you were getting married and weren't accepted as a couple, or you put in at least 4 years or something to that effect. This isn't, it sounds like the military. It doesn't sound like volunteering. See, because if it was volunteering, you just simply wouldn't have people there crying at Bethel because a guest came and brought a baby. And you have people that hadn't even seen a baby unless they were babies in their hall or they saw them in field service. So someone brings a baby when they came to Bethel to have a meal, have lunch. And then they stayed for the Bethel Family Watchtower study, where you got women in the auditorium bawling their eyes out because there's a baby here and they're not allowed to have a baby. Otherwise, they got to leave Bethel. So if leaving Bethel wasn't that big of a deal because it's voluntary, you come, you know, to Bethel and volunteer for a while, leave, have your kid, you know, family, come back, volunteer when you want. That's not what it was. It's not voluntary. Stop lying and saying this was voluntary. Excuse me. Still getting over a little bit of a cough there. This was a religious directive. It was an assignment. It wasn't a voluntary situation. See? So, I mean, let me know where I'm wrong. Comment down below. Let me know what aspect of Bethel was voluntary. This was like military type strict structure. You had dish duties where you had to help out the kitchen and cleaning up. You had watchman duties where you had to stay up all night. You're all-night watchman where you stayed up all night. And if you were at the farm, I don't know how it was in Brooklyn, but if you're at the farm where I was, you sit out in a booth all night fighting to stay awake because you have to be there. You're not doing that because they asked for volunteers and you signed up to volunteer. No, you are assigned watchman duty. You are assigned dish duty. You don't sign up to volunteer for this stuff. And your religious directive is that nothing going on in the world is going to last. All of it's going to end and end very soon. And the best thing that you can do is full-time service. And one of the better aspects of full-time service is Bethel service, or if you're married, special pioneering or missionary work. It's not just something you sign up for to volunteer and then stop when you don't want to do it no more, or take a little bit of time off of work to go. Now, there are some people that seasonally come and help at Bethel, but when we're talking about the Bethel quote-unquote reassignings, or when they made a bunch of people leave, we're not talking about the people that just came up there during a seasonal time to help with a specific picking of a fruit. We're talking about the regular Bethelites, the people that were told they're going to be there essentially until the end of the system, or until they did something that broke Bethel guidelines. Then they would have to leave. But other than that, that was an assignment. You were a Bethel member. See, that is an out and out lie that this was voluntary. I'd like to have other Bethelites come and comment down below. Let me know what part of waking up at 7 a.m., going to your assignment, working for a set amount of time at your assignment, having to work overtime at your assignment, having to be on call, at least I did at your assignment, having to request to be able to go visit your family, not let them know in advance. Request to be able to go and visit your family and only have a certain amount of time to go and do it. What part of this sounds like volunteering to you? Let me know, comment down below.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.